Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 294. Shi Shengpeak. Entangled wind and rain night. This was not a good place to hold a conversation. Emperor Taxian Jun brought Chu Wanning back to the Wushan palace amidst the gust of wind and rain. At the corner of the eaves, Xuemeng and the others were no longer around. Thinking about it, Mei Hangxiu was such a smart person that he knew what it meant to retreat temporarily. Putting his feet up to kick at the door, they entered the warm, dry main hall wrapped in the wet rain and wind. The light that he had left behind to wait for Chu Wanning had already gone out. Taxian Jun didn't care, since the moth didn't fight against the fire, he could just reluctantly be a spider hunting, bringing his prey to his lair with his 8 dense pincers. He pushed Chu Wanning onto the bed and looked at the silent man with an ice-cold expression. He felt that he had a lot of things he wanted to say, but when he moved his lips, the words that came out of his mouth were neither disparaging nor light. "What's wrong? Do you really need me to be like him so you can raise your head and take another look at me?" He pulled up Chu Wanning's face, forcing his dark eyes to meet his own. Beneath his fingers, the face was wet and cold. "Chu Wanning, you better accept this fact." He gritted his teeth and said, "Grandmaster Mo is no longer in this world. No matter how reluctant you are, he will no longer return." Chu Wanning seemed to have been stabbed by needles. His numb face actually started to tremble. This kind of reaction caused Taxian Jun to feel even more jealousy and hatred. Suddenly, his heart burned with anger, and he went over to cover his opponent's ice-cold lips. He was familiar with everything from kissing to undressing. It was true that the man in front of him was a tough nut to crack, but he had gnawed on it for so many years that he knew exactly where to take a bite and how to eat it. The method of resistance was the same as in his previous life. Taxian Jun easily dispelled his attack and then took an aphrodisiac pill from the bed, sending it towards his lips without any explanation. "It's a reunion after all. This venerable one doesn't want to see your reluctant expression. Here, eat this." Seeing Chu Wanning struggle with a frown, his eyes turned cold. The strength in his hands was so strong that it almost made him bleed. He forced the pill into his mouth, then immediately bent over and sucked on the thin lips. He stuck his rough tongue in, pushing the medicine that could disintegrate bones and soft intestines into Chu Wanning's throat. Ugh! A strong smell of rust wafted from his lips. The soft, moist tongue was pressing the pill against his throat. Chu Wanning was unable to struggle free, he finally had to swallow the pill whole. Mo Ran let go of him and he immediately arched his body and began to cough violently. He was so disgusted that he started to vomit. "Your throat so still, so shallow. You didn't seem to want to vomit when you had him in your mouth." Chu Wanning's complexion suddenly changed. He turned his head back and opened his eyes wide, as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. He stared at the pale and mocking face of Taxian Jun. "What? Do you think that no one knows about you and him?" As he spoke, he looked proud and angry at the same time. "Actually, the thing that you two did, this venerable one knows better than anyone." He took off his rain-soaked robe and went to bed. The soft fur fell in an instant, his broad, well-proportioned shoulders slightly hunched, his arms propped up, looking down at the man lying beneath him. His wet hair hung down, and raindrops fell on Chu Wanning's cheeks, falling into Taxian Jun's eyes. Taxian Jun's eyes were dark. He bent over, stuck out his tongue and licked the sparkling water droplets away. He felt Chu Wanning's body tense up and he chuckled, "Why are you still so sensitive?" If Chu Wanning had scolded and told him to scram back, then the current him was sadder than death. However, he simply bit his lower lip and did not utter a single word. Even though it was just the tip of his fingers and his bones, he could not help but tremble slightly. He hated it. Seeing that he was in pain, Taxian Jun began to calm down. He looked at the person below him, whose face was gradually turning red from shock and the effects of the medicine, and slowly said, "Speaking of which, he hasn't gotten to taking you, has he?" Moving his hands down towards his body, he whispered in his ear, "Tell me, are you still as tight as before?" He had such a handsome face, but he can say such dirty words. His voice became more and more bewitching, and the caress of his fingers became more and more wanton. The effect of the medicine became more and more distinct as he caressed him. "If you don't answer, I'll just have to go in and see myself. Let me see if you missed me." That medicine was very effective, and it worked extremely quickly. Chu Wanning's back was already numb and he could not exert any strength. He could only allow Taxian Jun to do as he intended. He suddenly closed his eyes, his eyelashes trembling. This was different from the past, since Taxian Jun had never bothered with foreplay before, so he didn't have much warmth in him. Chu Wanning could clearly hear him take off his clothes, and the next moment, the scorching heat was pressing down on him, ready to attack. At this moment, someone knocked on the door. "Your Majesty, Senior Han Lin was asking for you." "Get lost." Along with the explosive shout was the sound of the shattering of a porcelain pot. He grabbed a nearby teacup and smashed it onto the door as soon as the servant, who did not know how to take his time, entered. The door to the hall immediately closed and no one dared to enter again. Taxian Jun's rough thumb caressed Chu Wanning's lips. "Look, there's only you and me here now. There can only be you and me." Outside, wind and rain were mixing with thunder and lightning. Before today, Wushan Hall had been cold and desolate for many years. Taxian Jun focused on the reactions of Chu Wanning under him, looking at the effect of the drug as his skin flushed crimson. He felt that the extinguished fire in his heart has finally come back tonight. His consort Chu, his Wanning, his resurgence in this world. At this moment, all the warmth returned as he is back in his arms again. "No one will ever bother us again, Shizun, this venerable one's consort Chu." Taxian Jun leaned down to Chu Wanning's ear and softly said, "They say long separation is even more intense than newlyweds. You have been separated from this venerable one for so long. You see, this venerable one is not an irresponsible husband." As he said, his hand slipped down and grasped Chu Wanning's hand. He held Chu Wanning's curled up trembling fingers and with indescribable strength, one by one opened them and leaned to kiss them. Then with strong force he took his hand all the way down to his front. Taxian Jun deliberately moaned. He had made up his mind to let Chu Wanning feel the humiliation of serving a man, let Chu Wanning figure out that the one in front of him was his fearless Taxian Jun, rather than that Grandmaster Mo. Grandmaster Mo. Thinking about how he had been with Chu Wanning, jealousy and envy burned in him, making his eyes red. "This venerable one owes you so many years of favor. Do you have an idea just how much?" His Adam's apple is rolling with desire, and the low, hoarse voice was almost pressed into the blood of Chu Wanning. "It doesn't matter. It's a long night. We can do it as long as you want. This venerable one must feed you until you become insatiable." He was so thirsty for him, thirsty to the point of death, thirsty to the point of frustration, thirsty to the point of jealousy. So thirsty that he wanted to be able to consume his blood and bones. He made it to say that Chu Wanning wanted it, but it was actually accompanied by a selfless dedication to meet each other's desires. It is true that the Emperor, and only the Emperor, can raise the wisp of emotion from Chu Wanning. He suddenly opened his wet red phoenix eyes, and stared at him with anger. Taxian Jun sighed with satisfaction. "It's been a long time since you looked at this venerable one like that. When I see your eyes like this, I know it's you." When the words fell, he leaned suddenly, and caught Chu Wanning's soft ear. It was originally one of Chu Wanning's most sensitive spot. At this time, after taking the drugs, he couldn't control it. The thunderous shock rushed from his back and Chu Wanning trembled. But his reaction only spurred Taxian Jun to lick and suck more. The earlobe was swallowed in the mouth and the tongue imitated the rhythm of thrusting into the ear, licking moist and hot. During the intense stimulation, Chu Wanning heard Taxian Jun mutter in a low voice, "There should have been an earring here." The voice was like a tyrant suppressing endless anger and like an abandoned dog burying endless melancholy. In his previous life, Taxian Jun had pierced an earring in Chu Wanning's ear and now he kissed it a few times repeatedly, desperately trying to prove that this person had returned to him. His actions suddenly became a little rushed and rough. He clutched Chu Wanning's hand, forcing Chu Wanning to hold him tighter. He whispered, "Hold it yourself, put this venerable one in you." Chu Wanning gritted his teeth and wanted to break away from his hand, but the strength was amazing, not to mention that he used all his strength, and the meridians on his strong arms were all protruding. As he positioned himself, Taxian Jun insisted, "Put it in yourself." Chu Wanning's lips had been bitten to the point of bleeding, his eyes wide open, he gasped, but did not say anything, did not obey. He felt depressed to look at the man in front of him. After a long time, he choked, "Mo Ran. Mo Ran, you're not like that. You are not like this, in the past life, and in this. I didn't protect you. 2 lifetimes, watching you descend to madness, watching you die. I am not good, I failed you completely." "Why are you?" Taxian Jun was startled. "Are you crying?" Why was he crying? He did not feel it, the fire in his body was too hot. Taxian Jun seemed to have made up his mind to let him turn into mud. He had previously fed him a strong aphrodisiac. Until he spoke, Chu Wanning hadn't realized that his eyes were moist and his tears slipped down, flowing to the sides. Taxian Jun's look became very strange for a moment, like anger, like jealousy, dazed, like. Chu Wanning closed his eyes. He thought he was probably crazy to see a touch of heartache in those black purplish eyes. It was an illusion, nothing more. But in the silence, Taxian Jun suddenly held him up, as if afraid that he would scatter and disappear. He held him tightly in his arms. He did not speak again, did not force him to do anything. He let Chu Wanning sit on his thighs. After a while, he deeply kissed him. "Wanning. Wanning." The kiss was wet and impatient, painful and frantic. Taxian Jun's large hand caressed Chu Wanning's waist and then suddenly from the depths of the pillow he removed a bottle. It was already set. It could even be said that it had been prepared for too long. As soon as Chu Wanning saw it, his mind went numb. Eternal love poison. This was the aphrodisiac that Taxian Jun had used on him once before. Even if his heart was chaotic and sad, Chu Wanning still felt a fear deep into his bones. He has seen the efficacy of this ointment, and now he has also been fed the other medicine. Taxian Jun, this madman, he was still. Chu Wanning was almost struggling to push him away, but there was no strength in him. "No. Mo Ran, you don't want to." Shh. Taxian Jun's eyes were dark. "This venerable one and he are not the same. You will know that only this venerable one can serve you. What is so good about that hypocrite?" His fingertips dipped in ointment and inexplicably inserted it into Chu Wanning. Chu Wanning stuffed a moan, the line of his back tight, but the more he reacted, the more Taxian Jun stabbed into his body, stimulating him. "Your lips are bleeding. Let people hear, let them think that this venerable one bullied you again," Taxian Jun said while holding him, staring at him with the pair of dark eyes. "You do not want everyone to know what kind of used goods you are, how the dignified Baidu immortal, looks high with such pride. But in bed was dirted by this venerable one countless times." Chu Wanning's breath was burning but he still could not help but shudder. "My consort Chu. Ah, this venerable one over the years often thought, if you were a woman, would our ending be much better than this? I don't know how many children I want you to have for this venerable one." The other hand stroked Chu Wanning quickly and moved from the waist to his flat stomach, lovingly stroking it. "In that case, both you and me would have been good," Taxian Jun whispered while touching him. "Looking at a child from the two of us, we would have left each other some face. It may not have ended up like today." Eyes slid inch by inch, from Chu Wanning's forehead, to the frowning sword eyebrows, to the straight bridge of the nose and to the stubborn thin lips. Taxian Jun's eyes cold said, "Unfortunately, it's just a dream." And he drew his fingers out, using more and more of the paste. How long could he hold on for? He knew the limits of Chu Wanning. He had trampled those too. Taxian Jun no longer wanted to wait, no one knew his mood at the moment. The emperor had tasted all kinds of food from all over the world, but at the moment his heart felt like he had tasted the forbidden fruit. He wanted to immediately devour the person in front of him, completely occupying him. Holding him all night in warm arms as if he would disappear. He was afraid. He was so afraid of Chu Wanning leaving. So he wasted no more time as he positioned against his targeted spot and slowly pushed into that hot tight heat. Ah! Chu Wanning moaned, his body taut. Taxian Jun closed his eyes as he felt the waves of pleasure flow through him. In that moment, it was almost as if he had never experienced loneliness and death. All these years of loneliness felt as if they were being written off. Chu Wanning closed his eyes, his body trembling all over. His lust was burned up, the skin flushed all over. He felt shameful and sad, but these emotions were washed away by the drugs he had been fed, and the stimulation and comfort of Moran's invasion spread all over his body like ink stains on paper. Taxian Jun raised his head, biting his ears, holding him tighter. Chu Wanning gasped from pain as he pushed inside deeper and deeper. "Does it hurts?" Taxian Jun waited for his reaction, and then said hoarsely. "Endure it. You've taken me so fine, Shizun. I will make sure you never forget who you are with, how good I make you feel." Perhaps because the drug messed with his mind, everything was becoming more and more hazy for Chu Wanning. Or perhaps just because Taxian Jun did not refer to himself as this venerable one in a moment of forgetfulness, Chu Wanning's eyes swayed a trace of warmth. Instead of that sharp cold look he gave to this man for nearly half of his life, at this moment his look was actually soft. Those eyes stimulated the thirsty emperor. He sat up on the bed, covered with fur, pillows messy on the bed. He held his waist high and started thrusting fast and deep. Chu Wanning, biting his lips, refused to make any sound, but the more intense it got and the more he listened to Taxian Jun's unrepentant gasps, he gradually lost some control. A broken muffled gasp spilled from his lips. The sound was very light, but Taxian Jun was sensitive to it and started thrusting more excitedly. "Louder. What are you trying to prove, Wanning? It's not like I didn't make you scream in before." Chu Wanning's blush deepened. Taxian Jun's voice in his ear about scandalous old accounts was like he was showing off treasures. He punctuated his statement with a particularly rough thrust. "Ah!" The angle suddenly changed and hit against the sensitive spot of Chu Wanning's body. Taxian Jun could feel him suddenly go limp. He smiled in a low voice, "Is it good? Isn't your husband the best?" He did not expect Chu Wanning to answer and also knew that Chu Wanning would never answer. The emperor, almost in a sad complacency, said, "I know you like to be done like this." Due to the numerous manipulation, Chu Wanning lost consciousness for a moment. He could not help but whisper out, "Ah, ah." Taxian Jun, with great validation, moved his large hands up to hold Chu Wanning's tight waist and he slammed quick and urgent, "Louder. Shizun." Chu Wanning was reluctant, biting his lips tightly and did not make any more sound. But Taxian Jun was relentless. Chu Wanning simply could not stand the stimulation. He seemed to be dying. Suddenly he loosened his lips and in almost desperation shouted, "Ah, ah, ah." Chu Wanning at this time was almost incoherent. He couldn't hear what Taxian Jun was saying. His red eyes opened slightly. He was powerless that he could just lie on Taxian Jun's strong chest and give in to the violent manipulation. The pair of black purplish eyes were filled with lust, full of boundless spring. Taxian Jun stared at his Shizun in pain, his eyes almost obsessed. While gasping lowly he asked, "Can you feel me, Shizun?" Chu Wanning was barely conscious by then, barely hanging in. He could only gasp red-faced, "Ah, ah, Moran. Moran. Moran." Many years flashed before his eyes, from youth to adult, scenes from both lives intertwined together. Chu Wanning's mind felt fragmented like it was torn to pieces. The desire, love, and the drowning pleasure, it seemed like an illusion. He didn't know which life was real, which life had gone. Under the collision of extreme pain and extreme pleasure, everything was broken. His world was shattered into fragments, falling like snow, and every fragment has a reflection of Mo Ran laughing, crying, being good, being crazy. He saw the figure of Taxian Jun and Grandmaster Mo mingled together, at the end of the vast snow, holding an oil paper umbrella, quietly looking at him. That pair of purplish black eyes at times seemed good and at times seemed evil. In the end, the snow fell harder and both Taxian Jun and Grandmaster Mo disappeared. At the end of it stood the one he first met, the young Mo Ran, frail and weak. That youth looked up from beneath the umbrella, and smiled, "Master, I'm going to go now. Please pay attention to me. Please. For the last time. Please take care of me. For the last time. Please take care of me. No matter which one of me, after this war, perhaps we will part. Please pay attention to me. In the beginning of our apprenticeship, I looked up to you for such a long time and you never acknowledged me. In the end, I only have this broken body to force you to entangle with me. Please don't hate my madness and my ignorance. Please pay attention to me. Please." Mo ran, nearly out of it. Chu Wanning's heart suddenly throbbed painfully. When he gained consciousness he had already embraced Taxian Jun's body. He swallowed harshly. Mo ran. Taxian Jun was startled, because even in the most lingering and few gentle moments of the previous life, Chu Wanning did not take the initiative to hug him. He stayed still for a while, and then suddenly with a low growl flipped Chu Wanning on his back and lifted his long legs and began to push into him again. Chu Wanning frowned his sword-like eyebrows. In his eyes he could see Wushan Palace, but it's as if he is in the inn at Vuchame Town. At that time, he and Mo Ran had made love for the first time. It had been just a moment, but it seemed to be separated by 100 years. He raised his head and released a muffled, "Ah." The voice was very emotional, although not loud, but all the blood in Taxian Jun's veins started boiling. He was almost ruthless, eyes reflecting only him. "Wanning, Wanning." The hot sweat dripped down, as if to glue two naked bodies together. In their previous life they had done this over countless times on this bed. Taxian Jun changed the position many times. He seemed to want to make up for these years of absence. He took Chu Wanning lying in bed from behind, then he let Chu Wanning ride on top of him. He even put Chu Wanning out of bed, against the wall. That's his consort Chu, he wanted to do whatever he wills. He would caress him lovingly, pity him, torture him and possess him completely. He wanted Chu Wanning to be his in every reincarnation, every lifetime. No one could take him away, no one could steal him. Not even himself. Finally, he pushed Chu Wanning back on the large bed. His instincts seemed to be telling him something. Even though he clearly knew it was impossible, but he still wanted to make his lover have his child, like a primitive beast. Like this, he held up Chu Wanning's waist, and kissed him fiercely on the lips while aggressively making love with him. "Darling, you are too good," the man gasped. The pleasure gradually increased, the speed of his thrust going faster and faster, the breathing sound was also erratic. Chu Wanning felt like he was dying, his fingers tight against the sheets, while his body convulsed. "Ah, ah, slow, slow. Almost there." He bowed his head and kissed Chu Wanning's sweaty forehead, his Adam's apple rolling. The pleasure from Chu Wanning's insides clenching around him caused him to furrow his brow and he nearly moaned. Immediately, he began to ruthlessly thrust into him. Chu Wanning's legs were wrapped tight and even his toes were trembling. "I want to come inside you." "Wanning," Taxian Jun looked down at Chu Wanning's face, he stared at the flushed face, eyes obsessed and crazy. They came together, except Chu Wanning wasn't like Taxi and June. Since they'd started, Chu Wanning had already finished twice. This time, he barely had anything left. Taxi and June, on the other hand, came too much. He lifted Chu Wanning's leg and forced him to accept all of it, which made him moan with the intensity of it. After a long time, Taxi and June put Chu Wanning's leg down, and leaned heavily on his body. He felt that Chu Wanning wanted to move, wanted to pull the pillow out from behind him. But he raised his hand, held Chu Wanning's wrist and stopped him. Staring at Chu Wanning's erotic dazed face after their climax, the black purplish pupils flashed a strange light. His invincible sworn enemy. The Shizun he couldn't defile. A clean Baidu immortal in the eyes of the world. A man he wanted but couldn't have. Finally, the taste of the strong conquest is pure ecstasy. Taxi and June had just vent his desire, but it again began to stir. Chu Wanning was his addiction, as long as his eyes stubborn, moist with tears but still fierce, so much as a glance at him, his heart would ignite with wildfire, moving all the way to his groin. So he grabbed Chu Wanning's hand, kissed the back of it, and whispered, "Don't move. Stay still for a while. This venerable one will continue." Taxi and June told no false words. This night, he entangled with Chu Wanning repeatedly several times, till the half a piece of animal skin pelt had slipped down, ruined beyond repair. After the last one, Taxi and June held Chu Wanning's body and kissed his face. His Shizun, his consort Chu, who was once pure and untainted, but at the moment was passed out, naked, lustful. Chu Wanning's skin looked as if it had been soaked in the finest pear blossom wine, flushed beautifully. A pair of phoenix eyes stared, unfocused, his breathing rapid. Redness spread from the ends of his eyes, and his lips were slightly open, trembling unconsciously. Taxi and June stared at the moist quivering lips. He could not help but think of how he was never willing to show weakness in front him but had willingly done lewd things with Grandmaster Mo. His anger burst into flames, even though he has done it so many times. He again pushed into him again. Chu Wanning at this time was already wrung dry, he was almost unconscious, so instinctively a hoarse cry came out, "Ah!" Only he could do this. Taxi and June thought so. He lifted his hand to touch the other's face. Chu Wanning instinctively shrunk a bit, but still the large hand pinched his jaw and stroked his cheek. His face was clear but was wet with tears. After such a fierce and crazed entanglement, Taxi and June seemed to have finally confirmed something. He sighed softly, "Wanning. You've finally returned. Don't leave me anymore." Black purplish pupil reflected the strong but fragile face. Dazedly, Taxi and June leaned over and kissed Chu Wanning and sighed contentedly. "Go to sleep." He pulled over the messy brocade quilt, covering both of them. Taxi and June slept while holding onto Chu Wanning. Just like that snowy night on Nanping Mountain, the night before Mo Ran died. He was also holding him in his arms, until the light dimmed, until dawn broke on the horizon. These two people were the same. As the lust was fading, Chu Wanning felt like a puppet who had been manipulated. He couldn't say or do anything. He stayed in this state for a long, long time. Slowly, his consciousness began to return. He began to hear the rain outside, he could feel Taxi and Jun's breathing, his embrace. After a while, he looked towards Taxi and June, who was resting with eyes closed. For a second, Chu Wanning felt an intense stab of fear. He didn't know which time this was. The person next to him was so cold. He was afraid this body would be like the one at Nanping Mountain and would gradually lose its life, its heartbeat gradually stopping. He started to tremble with fear. Why? This was just an empty shell, a living corpse. But why was he reacting like before, with the same emotions and behavior? But of course Taxi and June wouldn't answer. Or perhaps Taxi and June himself doesn't know. The chaotic thoughts and emotions gradually faded, and his gaze became clearer. Chu Wanning forced himself to calm down. He indeed was able to, in such despair and pain, to force himself to calm down. Wushan Palace was filled with the strong scent of desire. Right, this was Wushan Palace. Not Nanping Mountain. The one holding him was not Grandmaster Mo but Taxian Jun. This was his long-dead lover, disciple, husband, just a living corpse. Chu Wanning endured the sorrow in his throat, and slowly suppressed all of his emotions. He removed them, obliterated them. At the end of these 2 lives, the 2 of them embraced each other in the depths of this desperate situation. Everything slowly came back. The last lingering fell to the night. After an unknown period of time, the sound within the room gradually died down. Under the heavy curtain that had been drawn down, the blanket that had fallen down randomly was revealed. The bright and dim light from the dense flame outside the window made it difficult for anyone to see it. The heavy rain didn't stop. On the contrary, it only got heavier and heavier. Chu Wanning opened his eyes in the dark night. The man beside him had already fallen asleep. Perhaps it was because he had grown accustomed to it after so many years of being together, or perhaps it was because Taxian Jun thought that it would be very safe since he fed him aphrodisiac. Half of his well-proportioned body was still pressed down on him, heavy enough to make him breathless. Chu Wanning turned his head and looked at the man's face. When the gate of time and space, life and death had just opened, he had come into contact with Taxian Jun. He could still remember the ice-cold feeling and the deathly stillness of his chest. But the person right next to him right now had a heartbeat. The unearthed spiritual core once again gathered itself into a heart-like object within Taxian Jun's body. Don't think too much about it. Mo Ran is dead. No matter which world, they were all dead. This was what Chu Wanning told himself despite hearing this slow and powerful heartbeat. Mo Ran was dead. This was only a soulless body. You know what you have to do. His heart was as hard as iron and a brilliant light began to gather in his palm. However, the light would sometimes turn bright and sometimes dim, and then finally extinguish. Chu Wanning silently stared at the man in front of him. The light was very dim. When Taxian Jun closed his eyes and lowered his eyelashes, it was even harder to tell if it was the Mo Ran from his other life or his current life. Chu Wanning suddenly felt that this time was very similar to the rainy night when they first slept together in the Vuchame town. That night, he had actually woken up as well. He had leaned over and gently kissed Mo Ran's sleeping face. No. No, no, no. Mo Ran was already dead. Even if he had a heartbeat, it would still be a corpse. Even if it could speak, it was still a soulless being. He's dead. However, why did he still remember what happened after he was reincarnated? Why did the emotions in his eyes look so clear and real? Why? Chu Wanning was startled. He could not bear to think about it any longer. Gritting his teeth, the light in his hand rose up and summoned Huaxia, condensing it into a shining golden dagger. The instant he turned around, he closed his eyes and mercilessly stabbed towards Taxian Jun's chest. With a chi sound, he stabbed through the sword hilt. Chu Wanning suddenly opened his eyes. There was no trace of the other man around him. The sharp blade formed from sand pierced through the bed. In the end, the holy weapon which could cut through metal like mud, was unable to pierce through the living corpse of the emperor. The rain was pouring fiercely. One of the windows in the east had been needing repair for a long time. It had bounced open in the middle of the night. A torrential downpour poured in, creating a chilly draft. A white lightning bolt tore through the sky and struck the interior of the room, and a cold, snow-white light shone upon the terrifying face lying beside the bed. I still naively thought that you probably wouldn't attack again. Chu Wanning slowly turned around. Taxian Jun leaned against the bedpost. There was a shallow cut on his bare chest. It was a scratch he had left when he dodged. He didn't care and just coldly looked at Chu Wanning. I didn't think you would still want to kill me. He rushed forward with astonishing speed and caught hold of Chu Wanning's wrist in an instant. With a crisp kick sound, he dislocated his arm. Isn't it unexpected that I seem to be more powerful than ever before? Taxian Jun stared at the pale face of Chu Wanning in pain, but he did not say a word. You must have never seen any of these before. He paused, as if mocking himself. Actually, there is nothing to be surprised about. If you were left alone and you are not familiar with anyone, then you can never let your guard down. There was nothing else to do except to cultivate. After 7 or 8 years like this, anyone would make tremendous progress. The bright light of Weisha disappeared and was replaced by a fragmented shadow, merging back into Chu Wanning's bones and blood. Taxian Jun, in the past, all my moves were all taught to me by you. But not anymore. How long has I been dead? I've been suffering in this world for, how long have he had been alive, and now I've even gotten his spiritual core. As he spoke, he rubbed the thick callus on Chu Wanning's forehead with his thumb. With Shizun's ability, it's impossible to kill me. After a while, he seemed to have thought of something and said, Shizun might not know what I've been doing in this tattered world all these years. His tone was intimate and he didn't call himself this venerable one again. I'll bring you over to take a look now. The place he wanted to bring Chu Wanning to wasn't too far away. It was at the peak of the mountain, the weakest place in the world of cultivation. During the previous battle, his clothes were all soaked, and he even ripped off Chu Wanning's clothes. However, Taxian Jun wasn't worried about this. He used his fingers to send out an order with a spirit butterfly. Moments later, Lu Gong brought a pile of fresh clothes into the hall. From behind the curtain, Chu Wanning saw the old servant that he hadn't seen for many years. He didn't know what to feel. Your Majesty, the clothes have been delivered. You're the only one who knows where these old clothes were kept. They came pretty quickly. Taxian Jun said calmly, leave it here, then you can go. Knowing that Chu Wanning was in the bed, the old servant's hands trembled a little. Although he wanted to take another look at his old master, due to etiquette, he lowered his head and stumbled out of the hall. The clothes fit perfectly. They couldn't possibly not fit because they were an old item from Chu Wanning's previous life. Mo Ran sat on his long legs at the side and silently watched as Chu Wanning put on his clothes. His eyes were a little blurry. No one knew what he was thinking, just like how no one knew why Grandmaster Chu had been dead for so many years and how the Emperor hated him the most and yet did not burn those clothes despite that they were something that no one needed anymore. The rain was still heavy and the dark clouds in the night sky were churning as strange phenomena appeared everywhere. However, Taxian Jun lazily opened up a barrier against the rain, enveloping the both of them within. As they walked through pavilions after pavilions, they could only see the dark and gloomy rain. The scenery and the servants' faces were so blurred. Your Majesty, Grandmaster. Greetings, Your Majesty. Grandmaster. After walking past the Three Lives Palace, they could already see the ominous red light rising from the back of the mountain on the Nahi Bridge. Taxian Jun was walking in front when he turned around and glanced at Chu Wanning with a smile that was not a smile. The Shisheng Peak is at the point of the confluence of yin and yang. The barrier is the weakest here. You used to come here often to repair the barrier, but have you felt any auras other than that of the ghost realm? Chu Wanning did not answer, but clenched his fingers into a fist under his robe. He already knew what he was going to see. Shi Mingjing had torn open the gate of time and space, life and death, controlled the Zhenlong chess game, swept through 2 worlds, and the last thing he was going to do was definitely not that simple. Since you are in this mortal world, you must have passed by many villages and towns. Taxian Jun slowed down his pace and walked beside him. He spoke in a calm tone. Don't you think that the villages and towns are terrifyingly quiet? Together they passed the narrow path that led to the back of the mountain and brushed away the lush vines. After turning another corner, he would reach the cliff at the back of the mountain. Taxian Jun suddenly stopped in his tracks and stood at the corner. Behind the cliff, it seemed as though a raging fire was burning, causing the mountain to turn crimson. He turned his face to the side, and that strange red glow extended to his eyes. He grinned at Chu Wanning with a sweet smile. This one has achieved many years of success here. Shizun, if you please. End chapter.